Welcome back to The Grind for a guide on the Act 7.3 quest number 4 Paradox buffs and Ectopic Generator path. They also have Quantum Invasion, so the defender is unblockable until you have 3 Paradox charges. There's also Special Delivery and Parry Vulnerability. You do not want to bring champions that trigger buffs easily, because when you gain a buff, you're going to gain one of these Paradox charges, and you have to end a combo in a light in order to get rid of these charges. So it can be challenging. So when you dex, you do gain a buff, and that's the only way you really need to gain buffs in this path. However, you can't really trigger dex back to back because you can't re-trigger the dexterity buff after it's already active. So you can see here we're dexed 3 times, but we didn't gain an extra buff. So you have to actually gain the buff by dexing and then attack to remove the buff. But attacking also is counted as triggering a buff. So 1 dex and then you attack results in 2 Paradox charges. Now this is kind of unfortunate because you'll see here we dex here and trigger a Paradox charge, and then when we counter attack, we trigger another Paradox charge. And even if you do a light ending combo, that still nets you positive 1 Paradox charge. Now parry gives you a fury buff from the node, so that's another buff that you're gonna have to deal with. So parrying and then ending a combo in a light is going to net you 0 charges. And I accidentally reflexively threw off my special 3, which gave me another fury buff from the kit, and that's why a champion that has buffs can be challenging to balance this node. So now you see the big problem is the opponent is unblockable until you have 3. So if you start the fight with no Paradox, you have to get yourself an in without being able to parry. But once you get the charges over 3, the problem is keeping them low enough, because now I just dexed again. I'm going to counter attack in and gain another charge. Then I can end in a light to get rid of 1. And that still nets me positive 1 Paradox charge, and then reflexively dexed again, ending another one in a light, and I'm still gaining more buffs, more Paradox charges. And then the parry nets you 0, so that's nice. But in this fight, you're going to have to rely on intercepting to some degree without having a dex triggered. And while it is nice to have the increased combat power rate with higher charges, the problem is if you get to 8 charges and you get in a situation where you have to dex, or sorry, even 7 charges. If you get in a situation where you have to dex, triggering the dex is going to give you to 8 charges, and as soon as you attack the opponent, it'll push you to 9 charges. So you really do not want to get to 7 Paradox charges, otherwise you can get in a pretty tight situation. There is a Daredevil Hell's Kitchen on this path, so I brought in Apocalypse for this fight, but you can see it can be kind of challenging to get yourself to 3 Paradox charges when they're unblockable. The benefit with Apocalypse is you can stun through the block, so if you do dex 1 time to get your dexterity buff, then you can, if you can't find an opening, you can at least attack into the block to stun with the light and then get your attack in. But there you can see we still have him unblockable because we haven't triggered our 3rd Paradox charge, but at least we're still able to deal damage. Now, as soon as we dex the next attack, we will be able to then start to parry the opponent. And again, I actually prefer playing with much lower Paradox charges for this path because of how difficult it can be in a tight situation. If you have to dex, you're going to net positive 1 charge, because dexing gets you 1 and attacking in counts as another buff once again. So you have to finish your combo in a light to get rid of 1, but you still end up positive 1. So it can still be kind of challenging unless you're getting lots of ins that do not require you to parry or dex. You have to ideally get a counter to special attacks that do not require you to dex the special attack, and that can help you peel off those Paradox charges 1 at a time. So you can see now we're at 6 Paradox charges, but we're going to end up taking a dex there, and that means we're at 7, and once we attack back in, we're going to be at 8. So we really have no wiggle room. We cannot dex because that means we're going to guaranteed push over. So I am able to attack into a stun here to get 1 of those charges off by ending with the light attack. Then I baited out a heavy attack to finish with another light attack to get another charge off, and then we're actually going to finish off the fight with this special 1, and it leaves us in an okay position for the next fight, but a little bit tight. Now we're going to take a look at a couple of the more annoying fights, but some of the fights are not too bad. This one was my least favorite against Vision Arcus. Once you do get the unblockability off, then the fight is a lot simpler, and really any Vision Arcus counter will do. You just have to be very conscious about the fact that if you keep dexing his special attacks, you're going to inevitably end up with too many paradox charges. So you want to get your ins as much as possible without having to deck. So if you can block some special attacks and then counter, then you can get a combo ending in a light that way. And remembering not to trigger other buffs outside of that. So avoiding a special 3 unless you're very, very low on your paradox charges. So here we were able to bait out a heavy attack. So that allowed us to get another in to end with a light attack and remove a paradox charge without having to dex at all. Now Nick Fury was also an annoying fight because of the second life. He's not really an annoying champion in general. There's some various counters for it or ways to play around his tactical charges in his second life. So any champion you use to take on Nick Fury should do. You just have to be conscious of those paradox charges and make sure that you don't trigger too many and get those light ending combos in as often as possible. So I do hope that this quick guide on managing this paradox path was useful. Let me know what your comments are and champions used in the section below, and I hope to see you in the next video.